All right. Well, good morning once again to those of you that may not have been in here when we said that the first time. We are really glad that you joined us here at Carolina Family Church. And we are in the middle of a series. We got a couple more weeks in the series, but kind of through the summer and the first part of the fall here, we're doing something called Summer Stories. Because even though school has started back, you realize it is still summer, okay? Kids were telling me the other day, they're like, it's so hot, it shouldn't be this hot, it's fall. I was like, it's not, actually. It's still sunny. We're in August, okay? It's hot and it's summer. So we're going to keep doing it all the way through August. But what we're doing in this series, for those of you that may be new with us, is we've invited some people from our church to come and sit down on the couch and receive some counseling in front of all of you. So it's going to be a good day, very enlightening day. You're going to learn some things. No, I'm just kidding. We've asked them to come and share their story, something that they've been through in their life or something that they've learned, or in the case of Josh and Abigail Keck, who are with us today, something they're in the middle of right now. And so I just want you to know right from the beginning, and Jess mentioned this earlier, but they are in the middle of it, which makes it a little more raw, shall we say, or something like that. Yeah. Okay. So, but I know that what they're going through is something that many people do go through, or something like it. And so, you guys are learning lessons, and God is teaching you, and there's still road in front of you, but we're really excited for you to share with us today. And so, what we're going to do at the beginning is do what we've done pretty much every week in the series: to start off and let everybody get to know you a little bit. So we'll just go one at a time, share a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into the thing that we're going to talk about today. So, Abigail, why don't you go first?
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Abigail. I grew up in Kansas. I lived there for the first 20 years of my life. I am one of 4 children. I am the second youngest. My little sister is here today. I have always been in church my whole life growing up. We went to a very traditional Disciples of Christ Christian church, and faith has always been a big part of my life. I started singing when I was 8 years old in front of people. I always sang a lot before then, just at the house. You can ask my siblings. They loved it. But I sang for the first time at church when I was 8. I sang Any Dream Will Do from Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And I never stopped singing. By the time I was 10, I was in the adult choir. And every church I've ever been a part of, I've always sang, as you can tell. I'm still doing it today. Let's see. So for me, there was never this big, salvation moment. I always knew that, God and Jesus were a part of my life. And when I was young, at the church I went to, about 6th grade, they started talking about getting baptized and what that meant, and that Jesus was our Lord and Savior. And when I was in 5th grade, I told my parents, I know what this is all about, and I'm ready now. I don't want to wait till I'm in 6th grade because I'm ready to be baptized. I know what it means. And so they said, if that's how you feel, you need to ask our pastor. And so I asked him, I told him I know that Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and I am ready to be baptized now. And he said, well, if that's how you feel and you're ready, then I think you should. So we always did baptisms on Easter Sunday. And so a couple weeks leading up to it, you went through these classes during Sunday school hour and learned a little bit more about it. And then Easter Sunday, got up there, was baptized, went up the creepy steps in the back of the traditional church, the baptismal, the whole thing. So yeah, I've always, known Jesus and had a lot of faith, and that's pretty much it. All about me.
Yeah, and so, I think it's interesting as we were talking about your story, you don't have that moment where you look back and you're like, this is the day that I asked Jesus into my heart, and I think that is a story for a lot of people, but, I grew up in a church, and my dad was a pastor, and so we were there all the time, and it was my whole world, it was everything that I knew, and so faith was always there in the foundation of my life. But then when I was about 5, we talked about it in Sunday school, that you needed to ask Jesus into your heart. That was the terminology, which, a 5-year-old was like, that's kind of, I don't know, how does he fit there? You know,
Right.
it's hard, but that's the terminology. That's how we understood it, you know. And so I had that moment. I remember the day that I did that. But I feel like, you know, I remember it not feeling like anything new to me, you know. It's not like, oh, this isn't a new decision that I've made. This is always, you know, I feel like I've always known this. But like I look at that moment, I do think we all kind of need that moment that we look back to and say, this is the moment where I raised my hand and I said, I believe this.
Right.
You know, this is my faith. And so for me, it was then. For you, it was when you said, yeah, I'm ready. I want to be baptized. I believe this. And so I'm ready to go. And you did. And I remember going, I accepted Jesus in my heart when I was 5 years old, but I didn't get baptized till I was maybe 7 or 8, when they felt like I could understand what baptism meant, you know. And we do that too here. We make sure a child understands what they're doing before they do it. But yeah, we had the same thing. The creepy steps walking down into, and I couldn't see up over the baptistry thing because we didn't have the fancy glass like some churches have. No. You know, ours was just a tank, you know. Yeah. And so I was stood on a cinder block. I got baptized standing on a cinder block, so that everybody could see. But yeah. So that's your story. And you actually lived in Kansas until your family started like moving slowly over here to North Carolina, right? Your brother came first.
My brother came first, and he had 2 kids, and my parents decided that they wanted to be close to their grandbabies. And so my parents and my younger sister were all going to move to North Carolina. And my older sister and I were going to stay in Kansas at the same time. And then about a month before my parents were getting ready to move, my older sister's like, yeah, I'm going too. And I was like, well, I can make it on my own. So I'm going to stay in Kansas against everyone in my family's wishes. I was like, I think for myself, I just needed to like prove that I could do it, because I was 18 years old, and I was like, I got this. I can do this. So they moved about a month before I turned 19. So I stayed in Kansas for a year. I lived with my best friend. The only like family I had was my mom's parents. They still lived in Kansas. So I'd go see them, and I had a church that I would go to every Sunday, and I sang. But after a year of being there, I really missed my family, and there was nothing keeping me there. So I moved here on my 20th birthday, spent the entire day in an airport, and so that was super fun. And then I moved here, and I knew nobody except for my siblings and my parents. And so I was like, I kind of want to meet some people. I didn't know how to like get anywhere in Salisbury or around the area. And so I got on a dating app, and I was not intending to meet the love of my life on said dating app. I was like, just meet some people, go out, learn about the area. And 6 days after I moved here, he sends me a message on this app. And so obviously it was meant for me to move here, and at the time that I wanted to move. So we started talking through the app for a few days, probably a week or so. And anytime, if any of you have ever met anyone online, there's this feeling of like, are they really who they say they are? Like, am I being catfished? And I thought as a woman, maybe it was just me that was skeptical. And so I was trying to like build up the courage to be like, hey, do you want to like video chat or something so I like know you're like real? And I'm trying to build up the courage to do that, and about the same time he sends me this message. He's like, hey, I have a question. I was like, yeah, what's up? And he's like, you think we could like video chat or something? So he was just as skeptical of me as I was of him, which made me feel a whole lot better. But we video chatted, and then we video chatted like every night. I'm sure I lived with my parents when I first moved here, so I'm sure they really enjoyed that. And I would like go sit in the garage, or I'd go like try to like sit where no one else could hear us. But then we decided to finally meet in person. We met at Granite Lake Park because it was about the only place I knew how to drive to from my parents' house. So I was like, okay, it's public. I've been there a few times. There's ducks. There's people. Everything should be fine.
The ducks are going to save you?
The ducks were going to save me. Yeah.
There's some aggressive ducks over there.
They really are. If you've watched them, the stuff goes down. So that's where we met, and we've pretty much been inseparable since then.
All right, cool. And Josh, you're from around this area, so I don't, if you mind sharing a little bit about yourself. And I'm going to go ahead and say it for you. Josh is super nervous about being up here. Like
Yeah.
being in front of like Abigail, she doesn't like speak in front of people as
No.
much. She sings in front of, so she's used to being like on stage with the lights and all that kind of stuff. But Josh does lyrics and does video, production stuff for us, so he likes to be back there where he can't be seen. But he's out here. So those of you in the production booth, you're next.
Yep.
So just putting that out there. So Josh, you want to tell them a little bit about you? Yeah.
Well, hi, my name's Josh. I grew up in Thomasville, which is right down the road. I was born with cystic fibrosis, also known as CF. So I was in and out of the hospital a lot growing up. I always believed in God and Jesus, but I just didn't know how to show it in and out of the hospital. I always prayed when I needed help or to get better. And growing up, my mom went to a couple churches, but every church we went to, she was very hypocritical, this is how you're supposed to live, this is what you're supposed to do. And then when people left, it was completely opposite of what they did. So she didn't enjoy that. So she believed, but it just wasn't what she wanted to do. But growing up, we did live right in front of a church. So she would take me over there. Back then, you didn't have Facebook, so they'd have signs saying, we're doing an Easter hunt, we're doing a cookout. So she would walk me over there, and I would go join the service, go color to Jesus and everything else. So during Sunday school, so that's about the closest thing I got, growing up. But then when I got older, I went into churches just to hang out with my friends, played basketball, just do stuff. I mean, it was never to serve. It was just to hang out and just do what normal teenagers wanted to do at the time. So.
And so you kind of, growing up, you had interactions with churches, you had interactions with faith, but your only real, connection you felt with God was when you were in the hospital, when you needed something, you would pray and ask Him. So you believed, but you didn't really you really hadn't put your faith or trust in Jesus for salvation. So you're just kind of around the church, but not really. You wouldn't say you were saved at that point. You hadn't made that decision. You were just around it.
Yeah.
And so then you're growing up. You go through high school, and you said you would go because you had a friend. There's a girl that you liked that went to a youth group, so you'd go to youth group. And
The normal thing.
And you had to go at least twice a week to play the basketball because we.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you had to go to kind of you're on the basketball team. What church you go to? So you had to it was very ordeal. So.
Yeah. So
I had to go multiple churches because I was like, whenever my friend was going that way, that's where we went. So I was like, I went to this church last week.
Just so he could play basketball.
Yeah. So I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Right.
I had plenty of trophies, so I mean, I was enjoying it.
Yeah. So in and around it, but not personal.
No.
Just kind of there because it was there. So anyway, so you guys end up meeting, right? The way you guys described the whole thing, you end up meeting, and you're kind of going to churches here and there or whatever, and then you started going for a little while to your aunt's church, aunt's church, right?
Yeah, we tried there a few times, and the last time we went there, they were like, if you want to come up to the altar, you want to get saved today, and we'll pray for you. And I was like, never. I was like, I can't go up there. My whole life, I was like, I'm not going up there.
Yeah.
And then that day, I went up there, and it was like,
Walked right up.
it wasn't me. I did not walk. I mean, something else made me walk up there, but it was not me. So then when I got up there, my uncle and my aunt both came running to me, and because they were one of the higher people up there, so they put their hand on my shoulder, and we were praying, and next thing I know, it was a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the day that it finally registered, it finally clicked, and you accepted Christ as your Savior. That was in 2017, right?
Yep.
The beginning of 2017, somewhere around there.
Yep.
All right. And then it was shortly after that you guys ended up with us.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. It was like the second or third service that y'all had.
Mm-hmm.
My parents, I was asking my mom about it, and she said, I don't really know if it was a flyer or did you guys have signs up or something maybe? I don't know. She said that she saw something. She looked it
been
up
the mailer
online.
or something like that. I mean,
she looked it up online and was like, we should try it out. It's right down the road from where we live. And we just decided, we'll go with them because we tried some other places.
And see that we liked the music, but didn't like the
preaching or
vice versa.
And for me, obviously, the music is very important. And so y'all had it all. whole
managed to
package.
get both at the
You
same
did.
time.
You
Listen,
did.
that's amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it must have been a good week. So, yeah. But yeah, so then you guys got involved, and then I looked it up because you, Josh, got baptized at Carolina Family
He
Church,
did.
and it was our first. I think it was our
Second.
first baptism or
first
second
baptism.
one.
It was?
Yeah.
It was the first one. Yeah, because it was in October of 2017. I went and looked at the pictures, and I pulled them down off Facebook, so you can look at them on Facebook if you want. I meant to put it on the screen, and I blanked. I didn't do it, but yeah, it was October of 2017 when you were baptized in the Ebersold's hot tub.
Yep.
So, yeah. Right. So that's your story, right? And that's a broad picture, and all that sounds really great,
Yeah.
right? But you guys right now find yourselves in a very difficult situation, a very trying situation. So we're going to spend the rest of our time talking about today. And I know it's a little tough for you to talk about, but I also know that you're committed to talking about it because this will be good for everyone to learn and to see and to be encouraged. And so I know you're going to do that today. So why don't you kind of just tell us from the beginning, whichever one of you wants to do that.
It all started, so we knew going into our marriage that we were going to have trouble starting a family just because of my CF. And so we tried for a couple years, and then we realized we're going to need help. So we ended up going to a fertility clinic, and so we ended up going, and we ended up doing a round at IUI, and we didn't tell anybody, not even our parents, because we wanted that we're pregnant surprise that everyone gets, and we had no reason for it not to work, so I think we threw all our eggs in one basket thinking it was going to work, and it didn't, so that was very, very hard for us to take in.
Yeah. There was a lot of why us? Why? We felt like, why did God do this to us? It wasn't a great time for our relationship with God. There was a lot of anger and felt like we were betrayed by him. Why would, this is all we want. Why would you, not make it happen? Why would you give us that negative test? So it was really hard, and it kind of put this block between us and God for a little while when we went through the first IUI.
Yeah, I think that's a very natural reaction to that. It's hard when you're talking about having kids. It's hard when you think about how you think about the way that God does that, or when he does it, or why he does it, and you look at. We say all the time, somebody has a child, and we're like, well, what a blessing from God. God gave you that child, right? And that's a positive thing when someone has the child. But the flip side of that, the backside of that is, okay, what does that mean if we don't have the child when we're trying to? Does that mean that God is withholding that from us? Does that mean he's taking that away from us? And what we have to do is, because I remember, I told you guys this when we talked, Jess and I had trouble getting pregnant at first with JD. And then Jairus just rolled in second. Anyway, it was anyway, but yeah, that sounds right for his personality. But so we didn't have to end up going to treatments or anything. Yeah. But I remember that feeling of, well, we're trying, and for goodness sake, she was a teacher at the time, and I'm a pastor, and we're committed to honoring you, and there are people who are having children who are not at all committed to honoring you or raising their children in that. So why are you giving them children and you're not giving me children? And we end up in this this frustration cycle of feeling like God has promised us something that he hasn't actually promised us. And as soon as we start holding God to promises that he never made, we're setting him up to look like a liar when he's not, or like he's let us down when he hasn't. Because his plans and his timing and all of that are different than ours. So we can't put our plan or put our agenda on him and then expect him to just do what we prescribed, because it doesn't work that way. So So I know that's a very difficult thing, to work through. The thing that God hasn't promised us that we're going to have children, or that it's going to happen now, or it's going to happen when we want it to. He's promised us that He will save us.
Yeah.
If we put our faith in Jesus Christ, by His grace, He'll save us. That's His promise. But He hasn't promised us those other things. And so you had to take some time to kind of work through that.
Yeah, so we took several months before, because after it fails, you always call the fertility clinic and you tell them it failed, and they're like, all right, you ready to do it again? And I think them being in that industry, they get somewhat desensitized to it. And so for me, I was like, no, I am not ready. My heart is broken and I don't have a baby, so I'm not ready. So we took some time, and we waited till towards the end of the year, and then we had just started talking about maybe doing another IUI. And then the beginning of 2020 rolled around, and we got a call from the fertility clinic that they were going to be participating in a clinical study, and they thought that we would be good candidates for it. And this, instead of doing IUI, we'd be doing IVF, which, if you know anything, is kind of like the end-all, be-all of fertility treatments. It has the higher success rate, and it's a lot more extensive and invasive, but it has a higher rate of working. So we were like, yeah, we'd love to be a part of that. So we had to start and go through all of this initial testing to make sure we qualified, because as long as we qualified for it, the actual IVF procedure and all of the medications involved would be given to us at no cost, which the cost of IVF is very, very expensive. So we were like, this is such a blessing. We were so excited. We'd gotten through all of the testing and everything, and we were set to start. And then March of 2020 hit, and the whole world shut down. Sorry.
So when that happened, they postponed the trial.
Yeah.
Right. They said they weren't going to be able to do it because of all of that.
Yeah. So we waited, and every few weeks or months we would reach out to the fertility clinic and be like, hey, is it back up and running? Have we heard anything? Because they anticipated, just like everyone else, that the pandemic would be over very quickly, which obviously it wasn't. And so we waited and waited, and then in July of 2020, we decided that we were ready to just try something different. We were going to do another IUI. So we did, and then it failed, just like the first one. Sorry. And we felt that anger and everything all over again. We felt like we didn't understand. Thank you. We should have brought these up beforehand. I already knew this was. So we were angry again, and we, kind of felt that distance between us and God again, but we just decided, we were going to keep going through life. And so then in December of this past year, we did another IUI. We didn't tell anyone. I don't think my family who's sitting over there knows until right now that we did another IUI in December, because we were really excited, thinking, okay, we can get pregnant and we can surprise them all for Christmas. And then once again, it failed. And we were like, maybe we just need to stop for a little while. And then right after that, the beginning of 2021, we get a call from the fertility clinic that they're going to start the trial back up. And we had to go back through all of the qualifications to make sure that we could still be a part of it. And because of COVID, they had changed a lot of the protocols and stuff. So Josh was not allowed to come inside the building with me. He was allowed inside one day. And that was the day we walked in, signed the consent paperwork, and then that same day I had to do a lot of physicals and blood work and stuff, and he was asked to leave as soon as he was done signing the paperwork. He had to go sit in the car. And so we started in February, They give you medications that you give yourself shots every day. You go back and forth 3-4 times a week for blood tests and very invasive ultrasounds. And you go for a long period of time. They bring all of your hormone levels down. And then once they get them where they want them, then they start giving you stuff to kind of build everything back up. And towards the end of March, everything was where they wanted it. And so we had our egg retrieval, and 5 days later we did what they call a fresh transfer, which is where they put an embryo back inside that hasn't been frozen yet. And the day of the transfer, they call you in the morning, and the embryologist called, and they were talking about like how perfect this embryo of ours looked. It was graded higher than other embryos. It was perfect. So then I was like, okay, well that's maybe this is what we were waiting for, and we just needed everything to align right. And so we go. Josh sits in the car. I go in. The doctor, 2 of the doctors were like, hey, we saw your embryo. It's so perfect. And I was like, okay, everyone's like really hyping up this embryo.
It's a weird compliment.
It really is. Like your little tiny lump of cells that's in a petri dish, looking good.
Moon baby.
Yeah, moon baby. It looks great.
Yeah.
So we did the transfer, and then there's this period that you have after any of these procedures, IUI, IVF, is what they call the 2-week wait, and that is the length of time it takes to then get a positive pregnancy test. So you go through this, and the first week of it flew by. Everything felt great. I was in a good mood. I felt happy. And I'm not someone who gets anxious really, except for in this moment, just because this is a little anxiety-ridden. But going into the second week of the 2-week wait, like something just changed, and I was super anxious. I just something felt not right. We were supposed to go that Friday because when you do IVF, they want you to not take an at-home test. They want you to go in and have a blood test. And so we were supposed to go on Friday, and on Tuesday, I just had this gut feeling something was wrong, and I was right. Something was definitely wrong. I called the on-call doctor that night and told him what was happening, and he said to me, you just have to keep the faith. Just calm down. It's okay. If things get worse, give us a call in the morning and we'll talk about it then, but just keep the faith. So I tried to be as calm as I could, but when someone tells you to calm down or to relax, that's really the last thing you can do. Next morning, things were significantly worse, so I called the doctor who was kind of over the study and told him what was going on, and he said, I'm going to be honest with you. He said it's one of 2 things. 1, you're not pregnant. 2, if you are pregnant, something is very wrong, and it's most likely not a viable pregnancy. So we're going to go ahead and bring you in early and do the blood test and just see what's going on. So we get in the car, and we drive to Charlotte. We cried all the way there and tried to pray, and got there, went in, did the blood test, and the blood test takes several hours to get the results, so then they send you back home to just sit there and, I guess, be sad and wait. And we get home, we're waiting, and they finally call us, and the nurse, as soon as I answered the phone, I knew what the answer was. She kind of didn't want to say it. She'd watched me go through this whole trial. When you're in a trial, you go significantly more to the clinic than if you're just a regular patient going through IVF. So, I saw her 3 or 4 times every week for a month and a half leading up to this. And she's like, so, you came in for a blood test this morning. I'm like, I know. She's like, and we got the results. I was like, okay. And then, she just paused, she didn't want to say it. And she said, they're negative. You weren't pregnant, and it failed. And we had just thought that this was it. Like, this was going to work. This was going to work. Everyone had just, the clinic were like, we know you guys are going to get pregnant. This is perfect. And then it wasn't. So, yeah.
And that's the most recent thing that's
Yeah.
happened. And I know one of the things you said was that what made that particularly difficult is that when you were going through the IUIs, that was private. You know, your family knew about it, you knew about it, or at least most of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but when you guys got entered into the trial for IVF, you decided you wanted to make that public and to draw a bigger, broader sense of support. And so you posted on social media about it when you got the treatments and everything. And I know a lot of you probably saw that if you follow them.
Yeah.
But that made it much harder.
It did. It made it a lot harder because we were really excited to be able to post, it worked, we're pregnant. And then finding out earlier than we were supposed to that it didn't work, I then had to sit there that day and type out a post that said it didn't work because I didn't want to wait till Friday when everyone thought that's when we were finding out to then start getting all these messages like, hey, what happened? And I was like, yeah, I can't do that. So I'm going to have to sit here and post this that it didn't work, which was hard because we wanted to, be able to share this with everyone and show them, what God can do, and then it didn't go the way as planned.
Right. And but the positive side of making it public the way you shared is that you had a lot bigger people around you than that knew it. The people sort of came out of the woodwork who had been through that and experienced it, and it created sort of a support network for you in that way.
A lot of people who we never realized had ever gone through anything like this were sending us messages like, we've been there, we know what it's like, people a person I used to babysit their kid telling me this, and I'm like, I never knew this, because a lot of people don't share it because it is kind of a weird thing to talk about, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But we wanted to share it because we wanted to show what God can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you guys are still in the middle of it. And it is one of those things, for most people, is very private. And so the fact that you're sitting here and talking about it with everybody is unusual, I would say.
Yeah.
But we need to talk about these things because it does create that network of support. And this isn't something where we're talking about, what you have learned as much as it is what you are learning, what you're seeing as you go through it. And it is awkward and it is a little difficult to talk about. One of the things we talked about while we were sitting down, just if I can lighten the moment a little bit, was all the things, the things people say to you. And the things, and I'm going to help with this. I'm going to help you so you don't have to say it.
Yeah.
But all right, so here's let me just help, okay? Here's some of the things you don't say to someone who is going through issues like this, all right? Don't ever, ever, ever say, who is the problem? Don't say that, okay? It doesn't matter. You don't need to know, all right? No. It's a team effort anyway. So, okay? So it's not, that's not the thing, right? You don't say that. You don't say things like, do you resent them for this or that? Don't say that. This has built a team with you guys, and it's supposed to. So, the best thing you can say is, we love you guys, right? We're praying for you guys. We're thinking about you guys. Aww. There you go. If you need anything, we're here, So, just don't say awkward, weird stuff. It's not, it's none of your business. Just you don't need the details.
No.
Nobody needs the details. You need the details.
People want the details.
Nobody else needs the details.
That's the weird thing.
Yeah, we're going to cut that out. We're not going to do that anymore, okay? No. So we're just not going to do that anymore. All right, so there are a few things that you are learning as you go through it. And even as you look back to your first reaction to your reaction to the first IUI that you did, to now you've kind of been through the ringer, and you've got several rounds of IUI, the IVF, and then whatever road is in front of you guys.
Yeah.
I need to add this one too. Okay, sorry. Back on that conversation. Things you don't say. This is how I got here in the first place. Things you don't say. Have you guys considered adoption? Okay, they know about it.
Yeah.
They're familiar with it. Okay, so you don't need to bring it up to them.
You don't need to remind us that it's an option.
That may be down the road. That may be something. But right now, this is the plan. So yeah, they have considered it. They are good. Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to put that one in there too. You've heard of that. So. So several of the things that we talked about that you are learning and have learned as you've gone through this process. The first one, and this came up with Aaron and Kayla specifically 2 weeks ago as well, talking about going through Merritt's cancer treatments. But you've talked a lot with me about the fact that you've had to intentionally remain thankful as you've gone through this. So if you can, just share your journey with that.
Yeah, so we try to remember about how thankful we are for what we do have, because a lot of people go through this and it destroys their marriage. A lot of people get divorced. And this has honestly made us so much stronger in our marriage. And we're just so thankful for Josh's health. Having CF, he was told when he was young that he would not live to be in his teens. Here he is, 31 years old. So, we're thankful for that. We both have good jobs. But it's crazy because we're actually also thankful for the negative tests, because during this time we watched two close friends also go through IVF, a girl I met at the clinic and then a girl I knew growing up, who both got pregnant. The first girl from the clinic, she, at her first ultrasound, walked in thinking she was pregnant when they told her there's no heartbeat and the baby stopped growing. And then the other girl got pregnant and at like 6-7 weeks went in and had a very rare complication that she had to then have surgery to end the pregnancy. And in those moments I thought, wow, I need to be thankful that all I had was a negative test, because if I had gone through all of this to get pregnant, to then it end like that, I don't know how I could have done it. So in a sense, we're thankful that it was just a negative.
Yeah, that's something that Aaron and Kayla talked about when they were talking about marriage treatments. As I mentioned, and they were saying, they were constantly seeing kids that were in worse shape than Merritt was, and kids who didn't come back for treatments. Parents who lost their kids, and so they were and going through pain really is a matter of perspective. Yeah. It's how you weigh it and balance it, and how you look at it, and to be able to look at your life and see how much that God has blessed you. I mean, you have an incredible family who loves you and supports you. You have each other, and your relationship has grown stronger. You mentioned Josh's health, new advances in treatment over the last couple of years. Yeah. Josh, you're able to work full-time now, or you've been able to work that, you're both working in banks, and you couldn't do that a couple of years ago. And so your health is the best it's ever been. Mm-hmm. And so there's so much to be thankful for, but it can be hard to see when it's the tendency for us is to focus on that thing that isn't going right. Yeah. Right. We got to intentionally put our minds on what God has done for us and how he has blessed us, instead of the opposite. And even through that pain, the other thing that you talked about was how with all of this that you're struggling through, you've had to choose faith. You've had to choose to worship. So if you can talk about that a little bit.
For me, obviously, I stand up here almost every week in front of everyone. And the week that we found out that we weren't pregnant, 4 days later, I stood on this stage and I praised God, because I knew it's what I needed to do. I knew that with all the IUIs failing, I kept trying to distance myself from God, and I knew that we had to stop that, at least for me. Oops, sorry. And then a few weeks after that was Mother's Day, which obviously, as someone going through this, thinking that they were going to get to finally be, an expecting mother on Mother's Day and not be, I told John that about 10 minutes before service started, I was downstairs in the green room bathroom sobbing. Josh didn't come to church that day, and I was on the phone with him, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to walk out there and put a smile on my face and praise God. And he's like, he's got you. You can do this. He will take care of you. So I dried my tears, and I walked out here, and I praised him once again, because he is a good and loving and kind God, and he didn't do this to us. This is just part of life. He didn't cause this to happen to us. And we had to stop and get out of that mentality so that we could come up here and I could sing and praise him. The first week that I had sang right afterwards, we sang the song Yes I Will, and there's a line in that says, yes I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy. And that is exactly how it felt. But you have to. That's a lot of the songs we sing talk about when you're going through something so difficult that you feel like you just can't hang on. He is there, and he is watching over you, and he is guiding you through it. So.
And that's a choice. Yeah. That's something it's easy to sing and praise when you feel like everything's going right in your life, and it's very, very difficult when it's not. Yeah. And so that's a conscious choice that you both had to make.
Yeah.
Josh, you mentioned to me that the first couple weeks after that IVF test, you just didn't feel like being here. You didn't feel like being around. You didn't want. You guys said you didn't really want the questions, and because you had been public with it on social media, and who was going to say whatever, and totally makes sense. But eventually you realized that.
Yeah. Afterwards, I took a couple weeks off from church, family. I just didn't want to be around anybody. It was very hard. I have a 40-minute drive to work every morning, so what I did was I just on my way to work, I was talking to God on the way to work and just had to get everything out that I was mad about, and just screaming in my car a little bit, the usual. And I don't know, like a couple days of just me getting everything out, it was like something went over me, like, you have to be thankful, Going back to when I was a kid, I never thought I'd be married. I never thought I would get the life I have today where I'm healthy, I'm working. And it was like this thing of like, I had to write my negatives and my cons, not write them out, but just think about them and just let the positives take over and stop living in the negative, because that was just going to bring me down. So I had to stop and actually just think of positive and just relive a lot of my positive stuff back to back in my head, like replay, so that way I could get the courage to come back to church, do what I love to do, and just stay positive.
Yeah, and you guys do serve so faithfully, by the way, and we're thankful that you're here and do what you do, and you're a part of our church family. The other thing that you mentioned is that the journey you're on is really learning how to trust God and his timing, even when it doesn't go the way that you want it to.
Yeah, so, everyone says, God's timing is perfect, and I know that in my heart, and I truly believe it, but there's been so many times through this journey that we've thought that we knew what God's timing was, because we're like, okay, this trial, he just set this in our laps, so obviously this is the right time, but to just step back and let go and trust that he will take care of everything, and it's not going to be on our time. We obviously understand that now at that point. We've learned that lesson. But just trusting in him and knowing that, one day, whether it's, the next time we do a transfer or anything, or years from now we decide to start fostering or adopting or whatever the case is, we're going to be parents one day. We just have to trust that he knows the right way and the right time to make that happen.
And so you're just trying to step faithfully right now and try to figure out what's next.
Yeah, and it's not easy. There are days where it's really easy and you're like, okay, I can trust that, he's got this. And then there's other days you wake up and you feel that little bit of anger that, why is this happening? Like, why can't we just have a baby now? But just trusting, because he's always there for you, no matter what. And he's gonna do what he said he would do, and whether that's, what you think he's going to do or, what he knows is right for you. But he's going to provide one way or the other.
And do you know what the next step is?
We do.
Excited?
We do. So we were talking for a while about waiting to do another transfer. And recently it's been, maybe because we were asked to do this is why it's been on our hearts so much, but we both have been thinking about it. and we hadn't said anything to each other. And then a few weeks ago, after church, we were driving home, and we decided that we are ready to do a frozen transfer because we have 3 embryos from our retrieval and everything that are frozen. And so this week, I have an appointment to start the process of doing a frozen embryo transfer. So it'll be, a month or 2 before we get into everything, but yeah, we are jumping back in, and we're ready.
All right, so I will be praying for you, and we will be too, yes? We'll be praying for you, okay? Because we love you guys, and we're so thankful that you were willing to come and share with us today, to share what you're going through. And I have a feeling that there will probably be people in the room who have gone through the same thing.
Yeah.
And you're going to find that out probably today. And so if you've been through something like this and you want to encourage them, I strongly encourage you to do that. Or I want you to know that you guys have made it clear that you want to be a resource for other people that are going through the same thing. So maybe you or maybe somebody you know is also going through it. And the broader we can make that network of support and connection and fellowship, the better. Yeah. So it holds all of us up. And so I just want you guys to know that we love you and that we're cheering for you and praying for you. And we are very, very thankful that you were willing to come and talk with us today.
Well, thank
all right,
you.
so let's thank them for sharing with us today. All right, you did it.
Yeah, it's done.
And nothing really weird came out.
Nothing super weird.
Yeah. All right, well, let's do this. Let's finish with prayer, and we're going to ask God that God blesses you and everything that's happened today as well. Father, we come to you and just want you to know how thankful we are for your love, for what you've done for us, the fact that you were loving and kind and gracious and merciful enough to send your son, Jesus, to die for us on the cross, to rise again, so that through our faith in him, that you would save us by your grace. And so we thank you so much for that, and it changes everything for us. And yet you know that we still walk through life full of sickness and pain and difficulty, and you walk with us and you empower us and lead us in the Spirit, but it can be so difficult, particularly when we're in the middle of it. And so I ask that you would give everybody in this room, no matter what our current situation is, that you would fill us with peace right now, to know that you have saved us. You've forgiven us. We are your child. We're spending eternity with you, and that's enough. And so there are difficult things that we face and difficult things that we go through, but we know that you're watching over it. We know that you're walking through it with us. We know that you want to use it to draw us closer to each other, not to drive us apart. You want to use it to drive us closer with you and not to drive us apart. So I pray, God, that's what would happen in our lives. I thank you right now specifically for Josh and for Abigail, for drawing them together in their commitment to each other and their commitment to you. That you have them on this journey and you put this desire in their hearts to be parents. And they're going through the steps in the process that they feel like they're supposed to go through in order to see that happen. But they want you to know, we want you to know, that they are trusting you with that process. Difficult as it may be, when they get their hopes up and then things don't go as they hoped that wanted them to go, that they trust you. They trust whatever the plan is. And that in the process, they want to learn. They want to grow closer to you. They want to understand you more. And so, God, as they go through this, I ask that you bless them. I ask that you give them peace. I ask that you continue to give them hope, which can be easy to lose. And I ask that you bless them. I ask that you keep them. I ask that you teach them and give them peace as they wait for your plan. And God, I pray that as they go through it, that our church as a body of believers, as a church family together, would support them and love them, encourage them, would pray for them, would not say awkward, weird things to them, but only things that will build up and be encouraging. And God, that together we'll grow through this. And that together, no matter what our situation is and no matter what we're facing, that it would draw us closer to each other and it would draw us closer to you. We're trusting you to do that. We know that you will if we look for it. And so we commit all of this to you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.